Hello, we are back to the second part of November 12th, A Course in Miracles class. I did have some technical difficulties at the church for the second half, so we are going to repeat it at my home. So here we go, part 2. And we are going to go to text 245, paragraph number 4. So it goes, the ego has a strange notion of time, and it is with this notion that your questioning might well begin. The ego invests heavily in the past, and in the end believes that the past is the only aspect of time that is meaningful. Remember that its emphasis on guilt enables it to ensure its continuity by making the future like the past, and thus avoiding the present. By the notion of paying for the past in the future, the past becomes the determiner of the future, making them continuous without an intervening present. For the ego regards the present only as a brief transition to the future, in which it brings the past to the future by interpreting the present in the past terms. So in other words, the ego does not like to be in the present. Why does the ego not want to be in the present? Because that would mean that it would be over here. And that would mean it would have to relinquish its hold on the dualistic way of thinking. That means it couldn't play the part of an innocent victim or have somebody else or something else be its perpetrator. So the ego clings to the past or to the future because to be in the moment means this has to be released. So the ego has a strange notion of time, and it is with this notion that your questioning might well begin. So what that basically means is Jesus is suggesting that we begin to pay attention to observe how the situation of time is worked out in our world, because it is worked out in a way that is very different than in truth. In fact, in truth, there is no time because there is no past or the future, and there isn't any form or space. It is beyond all of those. So he's asking us to begin to observe, see what this is all about. And just like in many of the workbook lessons, especially the beginning workbook lessons, if you remember, he says some very strange things and suggests that we practice with some of the skills around some of these ideas, like this chair means nothing, or this cup means nothing. Well, when you first start out studying the course, what in the world would he have us do that for? Why would he want to, have us practice saying this cup means nothing? That doesn't fit in very well with our understanding of the world. So again, he's suggesting that we begin to examine, pay attention to the way the world has been set up. The ego invests heavily in the past, and in the end believes that the past is the only aspect of time that is meaningful. And one of the reasons why it's so heavily invested in the past is because if we don't have the past or the future, we are in the moment. And in truth, the only place that healing could ever occur is when we are in the moment. So it doesn't want to let go of the past. It wants to bring the past or the fear of the future into all situations so that we remain mindless. And as one of the comments that Ken used to make very frequently was, this is a course in helping you realize that you do have a mind and that you can make another choice. Because before, we only knew about this little square right here. And in this little square, we're constantly trying to solve problems, fix things, change things, blame people on why our peace has been lost. Because as long as we're playing in that arena, there is no way we could possibly ever come to healing, because healing only occurs when we realize that this is what's running the show. This is the effect of what's running the show, if it is indeed the ego that's running the show. And that when we are the decision maker, we can choose differently. We can choose the Holy Spirit or the right side of our mind instead of the mind of the ego. And how do I know my ego's engaged? Because I am not experiencing peace in the world. So it's I guess, stepping stones. If I'm not, from the perspective of the Course, if I'm not experiencing peace in the world, the Course is saying it's because you're engaged in the ego. And when you're engaged in the ego, it can't possibly be a peaceful experience. And now that we know there is another choice, we could then make it when and if we're ready. But if I'm constantly trying to solve the problem where it doesn't really exist, I'm never going to find how to get to this place where true healing can occur. Remember that its emphasis on guilt enables it to ensure its continuity by making the future like the past and thus avoiding the present. And understand that this whole dynamics is because we felt guilty. We thought we did something too horrible to God, that he would never want us to come back and be part of who we really are and who we are in relationship to God. So we play this game down here to hide the fact that it is the guilt, sin, and fear in our mind that we are trying to get rid of. So we put it out into something or somebody else in the world so that we can then blame them for our lack of peace or our sense of guilt, having lost that peace. So again, it's all about mirrors and smoke to keep us in the wrong place so that healing can never come to the surface. And we will continually chase our tail and continue to perpetuate the illusion, perpetuate the insanity of the thought system of the ego. And just think about when an incident occurs in your life, whether it be happy, whether it be good or bad, but let's focus on something that was very uncomfortable. We don't just go through that one incident, we carry it with us over and over and over and over. And we sometimes refer to Byron Katie's work in the class. And one of the concepts that Byron Katie focuses in on is, if somebody's done you wrong, how many times did that occur? And let's say it's 100 times. And she said, but how many times have you repeated that over and over in your mind, reinforcing the situation that happened, but is not actually happening in this moment? Or how many times did you make a mistake and you carry that mistake and you repeat it over and over and over and over, and you badger yourself, literally badgering ourselves by dragging it around and keeping it alive in the past that brings it to the present, not the real present, but the present of the ego. And then, of course, we can add to that the concerns of the future, because certainly the way our world is set up, our concerns of lack or fear of the future equally fit into the storyline that we're speaking of, because they both keep us from being in the present. And I don't have the chart from the church at this time about the past and future, but if you're in the past or the future, you're not in the now. And again, the only place where healing can take place is in the now. And somebody in the audience asked a question of, what about the training that we've all had in regard to being safe in the world. Like if a lion's chasing you, obviously you're going to go run and hide from the lion to preserve your body. And I commented to her that there are people that can actually be around a lion or a tiger that would, because their sense of absolute peace, absolute trust and knowing, they don't emit the fear that attracts the difficulty from a wild animal, and that they could actually be in the presence of what we would call a dangerous wild animal and simply not be affected by it. But this is certainly not a course that says, now, just because you know this intellectually doesn't mean you are at a place where you can live that to that extreme. But you could say that the course is planting the seeds. That's at the very top of the ladder. But every time we step up that ladder, one step at a time, we are relinquishing the hold of the ego, and we are building our trust and our connection with what is true. And so we need to respect the thoughts and the beliefs that we've been taught and we've been programmed to be taught within the context of the ego illusion, and they support the storyline of the ego and keep it alive, I guess you could say. But just like I mentioned earlier, the workbook lessons where Jesus is taking our minds, and I use the definition of it's like our mind is like a solid bowling ball. It's solid and it's hard and it's impenetrable. But as we keep hitting away at that bowling ball, we slowly make it more palatable, more understanding of a higher way of understanding and seeing the world. And there are places in the course where it basically says that the storyline, the rules, the way that our experience will be compared to here and here are totally diametrically in opposition, so that when we start to align with this part of our mind more and more frequently, then the rules of our ego mind begin to fall away, and then these rules begin to take over. But we don't want to pretend we're over here when we're really over here. So that will show itself, will be experienced through us when we are really aligned with that. But in the meantime, you've got to do what you got to do to take care of yourself in the world. All right. By the notion of paying for the past in the future, the past becomes the determinator of the future, making them continuous without an intervening present. So, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, if something bad happened to you in the past and you're bringing it to the present, you're not really living in the present with nothing, with no ideas. You are bringing that idea and living that idea in the present, but you're really living the past over and over and over again. And that's why I so frequently talk about the idea of we need to drop this storyline, no matter how potent, no matter how real, solid it may feel. Then we want to be willing to drop that for a moment and then ask to have his will, his story, fill in that space that we pushed aside this to allow that to come forward. And I think it's also very important that we respect the experience that we're going through. This isn't about pushing it under the carpet. This is about acknowledging, I'm upset or I'm irritating. This is not fair. How come this had to happen to me? And on and on and on the stories go. Really get in touch with exactly what you're feeling. Don't just go, oh, that doesn't bother me. when in truth it does bother you, especially if people will say, well, I'm just talking about this, but it really doesn't bother me. But the question is, why would you even talk about it if it really didn't bother you? So there's usually some connection that is still alive and well within you, even if you're just talking about it. Because if you're at that level, it's not even a part of your awareness anymore, because you're over here, and this takes over and actually supersedes the connection with what this is. So if we need to start with where we are, and where we are oftentimes is, I am angry, I am fearful, I am concerned, I do believe this is an unfair world, and I do believe I am an innocent victim of circumstances beyond my control. But then there comes a point in time, much like with Helen and Bill, where they were going into their meeting and they finally got, you know what? I don't want to play here anymore. I'm not getting the answers I'm looking for. I'm not finding the peace that I really want now. And it has to be, I'm willing to completely drop the story to find a new story that will replace the story that I've been running over and over and over. Now that sounds real easy, but in truth, putting that into practice in our world is a much more difficult thing for the most part, for most people, because we're addicted to responding the same old way that we've always responded, because we've been programmed to act from that place. And to stop this flow where we are takes great effort. To wait, I don't know. Show me another way. And understand, if again you're coming from a place of you feel like an innocent victim, or you feel like you're being judged, or you feel like this world is unfair, it has to mean you're coming from this thought system. And it's not because of what's happening here, it's because this is the thought system that is engaged. But again, we do have another choice when we're ready to choose it. But don't skip steps. Don't just push it out of the way if there's really strings attached to whatever's going on in your world. So again, we're constantly paying for the past in the future, because we're holding the past. We walk to the present and then to the future, holding on to the same thing. And while we're doing that, we can't be free of it. We're saying, I really want it thus. This is what I'm going to carry with me. And if we're doing that, we don't really want the freshness of a new way of being in the world, which really means we don't really trust that God has a better way than the one that we hold. Even though we can sit here and say, but you don't understand, this is a terrible situation. I can't believe this is happening. But am I willing to completely let it go? And I know I think it was last week, we talked about the idea, or maybe it was the week before. Am I really willing to see my brother different than the image that I have superimposed over him to keep this storyline going? Am I really willing to see my brother differently? Or am I still in that place where I absolutely want to prove that they're wrong and I'm right, which just perpetuates duality? All right. For the ego regards the present only as a brief transition to the future, in which it brings the past to the future by interpreting the present in past terms. So again, it's very discombobulated what the ego does. But the most important thing is the recognition it does that because it's really afraid to come over here, because this means it has to give up too much of its investment in what it is. And why did the Son of God leave God in the first place? Because he wanted to be in charge. He wanted to be an individual. He wanted to be special. And he wanted to make the world as God. what I mean by that, he wanted to be in control. He wanted to be God instead of God. And if any of those are still intact in any way, that means I would really rather be here than I would here, even though I can sit here and say with my mouth, I really don't like this. I want to be out of here. If we're not willing to do the things that are required to release this and allow this. You might think of a child that just put their hand on a hot stove and they can say, Mommy, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. And Mom would say, you have to let go of the oven. That's what's causing the pain. But as long as we want to be in control in our way, we're really saying it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, but I'm gonna hang on there because I don't want to release it. All right, paragraph number 5. Now has no meaning to the ego. The present merely reminds it of past hurts, and it reacts to the present as if it were the past. The ego cannot tolerate release from the past, and although the past is over, the ego tries to preserve its image by responding as if it were present. It dictates your reactions to those you meet in the present from a past reference point, obscuring their present reality. In effect, if you follow the ego's dictates, you will react to your brother as though he were someone else, and this will surely prevent you from recognizing him as he is. And you will receive messages from him out of your own past because by making it real in the present, you are forbidding yourself to let it go. You thus deny yourself the message of release that every brother offers you now. So now has no meaning to the ego. The ego doesn't want to have anything to do with now because now means the end of the ego. So we'll do all kinds of contortions to keep it going so that I don't have to do now. And the way this is set up is so beautiful because I can make my brother wrong, make myself an innocent victim, and carry on the lie of separation and it not be my fault. So my perpetrator or the person that upsets me or the thing that upsets me is something I actually cherish, hold on to dearly. But it will always keep me from living in the now. The present merely reminds us of past hurts and reactions to the present as if it were the past. I don't know about the rest of you, but I used to drag my past and my past hurts with me in garbage bags, and I just dragged them along wherever I went and repeated them over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And yes, I've improved on that unbelievably. And yes, I still find myself playing that game on occasion. But compared to what it used to be, oh my goodness, I don't know how I continued to stand up because I was carrying so much baggage from the past that I could barely stand up after a while. And again, it's all a trick of the ego to keep you away from what is truth. And, there was a story of Bill Thetford that his dad came in and destroyed his office. This was when he was a therapist and he was an adult and had his own therapy office, and his dad came in and totally destroyed it. And Ken made the comment that years later, Bill was still talking about that as though it was today, which really represents, I want to live in the past because I'm afraid to walk to the future. And we're all guilty of this. And this is not a course in giving us this information so that we'll feel even more guilty. It's about giving us this information so that we can observe what we're doing, why we're perpetuating this, how this game is being played over and over, so that we could then Ask for help to remember who I am so that I can be released from the guilt that I harbor within about something that never really happened. In this chart, it always says on this side, nothing happened. This has always been here. But to the degree that I want to continue to perpetuate the storyline of guilt, sin, and fear, it's going to keep me from entering that place. So it really has to come to a place where this is the utmost commitment that I want to see peace more than anything else. And in the meantime, again, don't feel bad or don't feel guilty if you're holding on to the past. Just recognize that this is the progression, this is the process, that eventually one day you will be happy to release it. And you can't be there today if you're not ready to be there. It's okay. But smile at it instead of judge yourself for it, because you're becoming more and more aware of what the setup is. Simply recognize, I guess that means I'm too afraid of pure love. Holy Spirit, help me to take the next step when I'm ready. The ego cannot tolerate release from the past, and although the past is over, the ego tries to preserve its image by responding as if it were present. So again, this is the setup of the ego. If I drag the past in any way, shape, or form into the present, I am saying I don't want to find out what God's will is. I will continue to recycle my will so that I don't have to connect with God. And that will then be transversed into the future, because the now has not been emptied to allow a new future. We just recycle the old past into the future by keeping the present filled, or keeping the gap filled with the beliefs of the past that we carry with us. This is an interesting line. It dictates your reactions to those you meet in the present from a past reference point. And I'm just going to stop right there. So basically what this means is, if somebody walks in the room, whether it's somebody you know and you like, or somebody you know that you hate, or somebody brand new, when they walk in, you already have a preconceived idea of what this person represents. They don't have to open their mouth or say anything or do anything. You have it already checked. You have all the boxes checked of what you're going to see and experience in that person, which again, if you can come to the present, to the now, you can then come with totally fresh eyes. And how many times have you seen somebody that's, let's say, dressed in a way you wouldn't dress, or maybe they have tattoos, or maybe they're a goody two-shoe looking person, and you immediately repel them? You cannot be in the presence of the individual with open eyes and see who they really are, because you've already painted the picture of what they're supposed to be in your mind. And you will get the results of that belief system as long as that's what you print on the present. All right. So again, it dictates your reaction to those you meet in the present from a past reference point, obscuring their present reality. So we almost never see somebody fully from the present, fully from a blank slate, because we're always taking pieces and parts from the past and gluing them on to the new person, or the person that we meet today. So we really want to work on releasing all the past. And the best way to do that is, when you catch yourself doing that, simply take a deep breath and say, I want to clear the decks. I want to know what the present is. And for the most part, most people will begin this journey, especially when it's very difficult moments in your life. But eventually, even the subtlest ways of becoming aware, I'm taking the past with me into the present. will start to dawn on you, and you will begin to clear that slate more and more frequently, and you'll come from a more peaceful place. And then you can be totally present in the moment and experience that moment anew. In effect, if you follow the ego's dictates, you will react to your brother as though he were somebody else. And I'm going to again stop there, because we've already decided what they're going to be. And this can be applied as well. Let's say you're going to Thanksgiving dinner. It's coming up very quickly. And it's a family affair that you maybe begrudgingly are going to. And you already have decided on the way there that it's going to be a horrible experience. Well, how could it possibly be a wonderful, loving, connecting experience if you're walking in with the decision it's going to be a horrible experience? And I personally call this the Jello mold experience. When you walk in with the Jello mold of the past, you're saying the present and the future have to fit the Jello mold that I am carrying with me. Versus as you're driving to that gathering, to stop, take a deep breath and go, okay, Holy Spirit, it feels like because of the past that this and this and this are going to happen. But I don't want to carry the past with me into this experience. I want to come anew, afresh, a clean slate. Walk with me as we walk into this situation. And then you're inviting the freshness of a new way of looking at anything that comes into your world. Now, obviously, where we're sitting, this is going to take some concentrated effort, because we're so used to just letting the past run our now and then move right into the future without being in control at all. But all that's going to do is recycle this over and over and over and over. It will never allow this to take place as long as I am circulating in that past recycle bin. It's like there's nothing new can be found in the old garbage bag. It is only when I let go of that garbage that I can allow the new to happen. So in effect, if you follow the ego's dictates, you will react to your brother as though he were someone else. And this will surely prevent you from recognizing him as he is. So the only way we can recognize a person, a situation, the world, anything totally fresh and anew is to live from the place of the present moment. And begin to observe how quickly and how frequently you are living in the past, and you're bringing things from the past to this moment. It's sounds like it might be really easy. It's going to take a great deal of practice, because we are addicted to living in the past and dragging it around everywhere we go. But with practice of the concept of the little willingness and the choosing differently, we will slowly trudge up that ladder where all the rest of the ego attachments will simply fall away. But that is, again, a process, because we're so deeply invested in the thought system of the ego. And it's what we ordered. It's what we wanted for a very, very long time. And as we now begin to choose differently, to allow a new possibility to be opened, that we can then connect with God's will instead of mine. And again, if I'm bringing the past into the present, I'm saying, God, I don't need you. Go away. I've got this under control. It has to come from the empty gap, or the clean slate, however you want to word it, where I don't know. And it's when we're looking at it from this point of view, this I don't know means it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, as though I'm forgetting something or I'm not smart enough or anything such as that. It's simply, I really don't know. And I know we've talked about the idea before of the only way you could possibly judge is if you knew everything from the past and the future and everything that could possibly ever unfold. Then you could judge, but we have not got that capability at all. So this is about, I don't know. All right, Holy Spirit, I'm waiting for you to show me. And then the answers can be brought to you that are not from the past, because the answer will come from a whole different experience. The rules will be different. The situations will be different. And so often when people speak of coming, having an experience of a miracle, they say very specifically, they can't put it into words. Well, yes, that's correct, because this is a wordless place, wordless, formless place. So it's abstract. There really aren't solid words to describe or explain what's happening. Now, if somebody else has had a miracle, they might shake their head and say, yes, I understand where you're coming from, though I don't know the specifics you have experienced. But that awareness of this is coming from a totally different place than this. And oftentimes people will also say, wow, the situation unfolded in a way that I wasn't even considering as a possibility. So it didn't come of you, it came of the higher you when you got out of the way to allow that to come forth. All right. So again, this will surely prevent you from recognizing him as he is. And you will receive messages from him out of your own past. By making it real in the present, you are forbidding yourself to let it go. So do I want to live in the past or the future? Or do I want to live in the centered now where true healing can happen? And it's always up to me. I shouldn't say me, it's always up to each one of us individually to make that decision, and on an ongoing process of doing that more and more frequently. And again, back to that concept of this cup. I don't know what the purpose of this cup is. Well, if I'm coming with the emptiness of a fresh way of looking, then the concept can fill its place. But as long as I'm set on, I know, new possibilities are not available. All right, so this last line is quite beautiful. And well, let me just go back to the line before that. By making it real in the present, you are forbidding yourself to let go. So if we're bringing the past to the present and future, we are not able to let it go. I'm dragging it with me because it still has some value. And as much as I hate it, it holds value because I'm holding on to it instead of the precious moment or the now. All right. You thus deny yourself the message of release that every brother offers you now. And what he means by that is every single encounter you have with a brother is an opportunity to be released from this moment. But the only way I can release myself from this moment is to release or to drop all my investment in thinking what I think I know about my brother or myself or our situation. You don't know what that's about. You only know what the past has told you in relationship to what this is. And we have been programmed to look through the lens to see my brother as different because this is the thought system of duality. And as long as we're coming from duality, there's always going to be more than one or at least two. And that is different than being in oneness. Now, as you see, there's still two characters over here. And within the dream, yes, there will still be two characters. But as you can see, the characters are the same instead of different. And then when we mesh together in oneness, then all personality, all individuality completely collapses. But right now, we're going through the stepping stones to get to that point. And right now, we're not willing to jump that prefaces. So we are learning how to see our brother as the same instead of different, which will then take us to the next level of connecting one as one and no longer in separation. And keep remembering, in duality, there's more than one. In oneness, there's nothing to compare yourself to. There's nothing to blame somebody on. There's nothing that something outside of me can affect me in any way, because there's only the one. So this is all about bringing it back to one. But as long as I insist on holding on to duality and issues and problems, I'm saying I have this problem, I need to solve this problem, and we don't empty the problem and live in the moment to find the real answer that takes us to a more healed future. Once again, this sounds easy on paper, but living it, especially since we're so extremely addicted to the future, we will then hold back from it, and we will hold on to the past because we're too afraid of the future. But slowly the fear levels do begin to fall away as we continue to choose more and more frequently, because literally when we're choosing, we are coming to a place of healing in our mind, and we're giving less investment in this and increasing our investment in what truth is. So right now, this is the predominant thought system that runs the show. But as we begin to work through this process, this thought system is the one that starts to take over. And eventually, much like learning how to drive a car, when you first start working on driving a car, you're going through all the emotions and the fears and whatnot. But eventually you can just drive your car wherever, and you get there and you go, how did I even get here? I don't remember anything about it, because it becomes so automatic. Well, right now this is automatic, but eventually this will become the automatic way to be and to respond. But that requires us going through the process of acknowledging that I'm upset and irritated and fearful, or whatever the particular incident may reflect, but recognizing eventually that I want to find out what peace instead of what this is. And then we will be exposed to another way of seeing our brother. And it won't be like, he's an idiot, okay, but I'm going to forgive him because I'm a good little holy person. It will be, I will actually see him through a totally different light. I won't see him encompassed in the darkness of the ego. So this is not I'm going to figure out how this is going to be done and what it's going to look like. It's I see my brother as the bad guy, and I would prefer to have peace instead of that. Show me how to get from here to here, so that I know unequivocally who I am, who my brother is, and I now have that connection with God, because I am part of the oneness that makes that up. And that's the goal of the course. But again, I have to recognize the dynamics of what's going on within the illusion of the world. And then I have to be willing to examine my life and see all the ways that I'm dragging the past into the future. I mean, how many times can we repeat the same idea in our mind? Now, most of you might say, but I don't ask those thoughts to recycle in my mind. And I get it, that's our experience. But the very fact that we've chosen for the ego represents that I want that recycling to take place. And so it's running the show seemingly, but it's because of our introduction and our desire to have it run the show. So again, so often in the course, we're being asked to look, to become observant, pay attention. And then you start to catch the subtleties of the ego, and you start to recognize how the ego dynamics work, so that eventually one day you can stop, even for a moment, set up a different dynamics. Instead of this dynamic, wait, stop. I'm not going to do it the same way I did before, which either will throw this person off and they'll go find somebody else, or they'll keep trying to push you so that you will come back to where your contract had been signed. But if you really want peace, the desire has to consistently be coming back to, I want peace more than anything else, because we've been programmed that I want to get them before they get me. And I can no longer play that game at the same time as choosing for peace. It's one or the other. And how much do I really want that peace? Is that my overriding, no matter what's going on in the world? And once again, this is not about, if you find yourself not able to relinquish the hold that has on you, that you judge yourself. This is not about judging yourself. It's simply about recognizing this is where I am. This is where I'm choosing to be right at this moment. But I want to eventually come to the place where I can release it. But until that time happens, simply use this as a valuable piece of information that when we're ready to really relinquish it, we will cross over and connect with what truth is instead of what our illusion or the ego is all about. So again, a process that is being unfolded. And, some of the things that were spoken about in this paragraph, especially that idea of it dictates your reactions to those you meet in the present from the past reference point, obscuring their present reality. Well, I don't know. I've been doing that to my brother since the Big Bang. And yet this is what Jesus is preparing us for, to help us understand. This is exactly the way the ego part of our mind set this up so that I could never be fully in the moment. And when we really want to be in the moment beyond anything else, there does dawn that moment where it's, I don't care what the results are going to be or what they're going to look like. I can't tolerate the pain of living in the past or the future any longer. This is more than I can deal with. I've had enough. I'm ready to throw up my hands and totally, absolutely give it over to another source where true healing can occur. But don't be surprised at the ways that you will attempt to finagle this in so many different ways before that absolute, honest, total committed, absolute, I'm done, I don't know, I give it to you, occurs. And I can remember through the progression of practicing the course, coming to that place of thinking so often that I had released things, I had given them up, I had, washed my hands of them. And then when that actually occurred, I could look back and realize, yes, I was walking to the plate, but I really wasn't at the plate. I still had my toes in the water of the ego, but now I can see I really wasn't ready then, but today I am ready. And we can't make ourselves ready, but we can become more and more consciously aware of what the dynamics of the ego are and how the ego dynamics are keeping us very stuck in the illusion and what the illusion is all about. So I would suggest that you spend some time this week observing, how many times am I dragging the past into the future? Something that happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Am I going to allow that to be transported into this moment so that I can't be freely open to a fresh new moment? And don't add judgment to it. Don't add attack to yourself. Simply recognizing, wow, look at how the past is being recycled in my mind over and over and over. And do I really want to push the recycle button, or do I want to push the empty button so that a new way can open? So I think we'll stop right there and we will close with our prayer. And again, take this information into your week. Begin to explore, begin to examine, Pay attention. Don't let the ego be on automatic. Start to come from a place of being aware of what is going on, so that we can begin to fine-tune this process. Hey, I invite everybody to close your eyes, take a nice big deep breath, and let it all go. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What can there be in us that needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation, for the temptation of the Son of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given, and accept but this into the minds which you've created and which you love. Amen. So go forth, observe, pay attention, and see what you come up with during the week as you begin to explore how strong the ego's hold still is on us. But every time you catch it, every time you see it more clearly, it doesn't have as strong a hold as it used to. So I wish you all a beautiful week and keep working on it. See you next weekend.